Well, we finally got some news coming out of the G2 camp with Zven and Mithy moving and Expect and Trick also moving. It looks like the G2 bot lane is going to be Hjarnan and Wadid coming out of Roccat. And before everyone freaks out and says, oh my god, that's terrible. Basically, anyone you're getting from EU is going to be a downgrade from Zven and Mithy, unless you're somehow getting reckless in someone, but he's not leaving Fnatic. So basically, everyone's going to be a bit of a downgrade. And I don't think this is as bad as people initially think. They were the best part of Roccat last split, for sure.
Sure, and Pride Stalker was hit or miss at times, but he was dealing with some solo laners who were less than consistent and less than stellar, obviously. Faxi had up and down games, mostly down.
Just down.
And Betsy was inconsistent, to be polite, I would say, even though he's had hype for a while, going back to his earlier days. But yeah, Hjarnan and Wadid, they're not bad. Hjarnan is the definition of consistency, I would say, and even going back to his H2K days, he was considered a top 3 AD carry at times. So he's trying to get back to that level, and depending on the roster around him, especially with Perkz in the mid lane, maybe he can get back to that and carry some games on his own. Wadid, the only concern for me is that he likes to be that playmaker, but sometimes, as you see with playmakers, is they get a bit too aggressive and get caught around the map, sometimes dying more than he needs to, but that's also on a Roccat team where they need him to make plays. Whereas on G2, hopefully someone else will step up and help out with that. So it's not as bad as I thought. Obviously, as you said, it's going to be a downgrade no matter who you sign, but based on what's available, it's a pretty decent signing. These guys already have that innate synergy in that bot lane. So it won't take too long for the chemistry to come together. And again, Perkz is going to pressure the map more than Betsy did.
Absolutely. And I mean, despite Roccat having a somewhat rough split, I mean, they had a lot of deaths as a team, so a lot of the numbers didn't look so great for this bottom lane. But I mean, Hjarnan still had the highest damage percentage of any AD carries in the league, and I believe he was 3rd in CS per minute. So I mean, he's still able to get his farm, get fed, and be able to output damage in these games. It's just, Roccat as a whole, I'm not sure they really knew what they were doing. But they did beat G2.
Maybe that's the plan. If we take their players, then Roccat won't beat us anymore.
That's the plan. They don't want to lose that one game a year.
Right.
So that they can do that. But I mean, it's still hard to gauge exactly what this G2 roster is going to be with no top or jungle. But I mean, they still got an import slot, and you know, so the peanut dream is still alive.
The peanut dream is still alive.
But Perkz had said this roster was stacked. Now, of course, he's going to hype up his own roster. I'm not sure Hjarnan and Wadid is stacked.
I wouldn't say stacked. I'd say it's okay.
Woo!
Is that the same thing?
Yeah.
It's close, right? Yeah, okay.
They still have a chance to be the best team in Europe, and I think Hjarnan and Wadid, this is a chance for them to prove themselves, because assuming the rest of this roster fills out as people expect, it's not going to be like, yeah, but they were on a kind of bad team. It's going to be like, okay, you're going to be on a premier team in Europe, have one of the best mid laners in Europe. So here's your chance to show that you can be a top-tier bottom lane. And I think they might come through for G2. They should be able to come through for G2.
Definitely got to step up, though, because on G2, that's the big spotlight. Next to Perkz, you got to perform. So a lot of pressure on those two guys, but I think they'll be okay.
Yeah. So waiting for more news out of G2. There's been some more news in NA. I mean, there was a lot of rumors that guys like Someday and Flame were going to be heading back to Korea. Turns out, no. Flame is staying in NA, and he's headed to Flyquest to play with Wild Turtle and who else?
Thank God Balls is done. It's over. The era is dead.
It's sad, you know. He's a fan favorite, but he's clearly been on the downward trend for the last couple seasons. So I mean, Flame is an obvious upgrade in the top lane for them.
It's an obvious upgrade for sure. I mean, Flame was kind of this guy who was, you know, when someone looked at Immortals roster, they were like, oh, Pobelter, Mithy, Olay. And Flame was overlooked for a lot of that roster, but he was pretty solid for the duration of it, playing a lot of Renekton and Jarvan, some of these carry champions in the regular season, and a lot of Shen in the playoffs as well. So he can do tanks, he can do that carry thing as well, and he was holding his own in that top lane. His death percentage was very low, so he was not, you know, dying at all, and he was just holding his own in that top lane. So, I mean, he's definitely an upgrade over Balls, someone who can not get shoved in, someone who's going to win lane more often than not, which is something that Balls struggled with from time to time, demanding that pressure unless he was on his patented rumble. But outside of that, I mean, balls was definitely an issue. So with Wild Turtle and Flame now, you've got these two guys that definitely have a high skill cap. And hopefully together with whatever else they put on this roster, it'll look a bit more competitive than the old Flyquest, even though Flyquest made noise somehow in the playoffs. I
mean, they always do with the reverse sweep gene. That's something they're going to lose, assuming High doesn't come back, which he probably won't. But
probably won't.
It's something you're going to lose, it's something you got to risk. New logo, new team, new era for Flyquest, and that's a pretty good start for that roster. It's a good. I'm glad they kept Wild Turtle on that team. He was the best part of them in summer, and yeah, Flame obviously a cure upgrade. So good job to Flyquest so far.
Maybe an import in that mid lane again, like we've been saying.
That is key. You got to have an import there. An import that wasn't in the mid lane that's heading over to Optic is former NA LCS MVP Arrow, going to be heading to the bottom lane to join Acadian. Now, it is risky to use an import slot on that 80 carry, especially with guys like Cody Sun and Alltech available. But there's only 2 of those guys, and there's 3 or 4 teams that need an 80 carry, so that's probably the main import we were thinking guys would go for that 80 carry spot.
Yeah, and you've seen the good and the bad from Arrow. Obviously, the good being that MVP performance in spring.
Good.
That's pretty good with a KD of 5.3 over the duration of that split. And then you've seen the bad, where he was negative 4.1 CSD at 10 minutes in the summer split. Just always falling behind in lane, though his team fighting always superb as well. You can get him through that laning phase, and obviously Arrow steps up to the next level. Some Kalista, Varus, he's good on those champions. So it's just which Arrow comes out. Obviously, the summer iteration of Phoenix 1 was not as good as the spring one. So on a better team, hopefully Arrow can get back to what he was doing before in spring. So it's just which Arrow's going to show up, and Optic's kind of gambling that'll be the good one, the MVP one, and they're kind of relying on that so far, especially when you use an import slot on the guy. He's got to step up.
Yeah, and basically by using that, the Optic's going to have likely a questionable top or mid lane. I mean, they're going to have to really pursue one of the top domestic guys in those positions, and with Pobelter already gone, you probably want top lane for that domestic spot, so either Zig or Lorlo, really, because there's not a whole lot else available right now in that top lane or those solo lanes for those guys. But I think what you're starting to see is these kind of random mishmash of teams that are coming in because there's just so many available guys that there's no synergy, there's no connections between a lot of these guys, which is nice that, I mean, Ryu and Meteos got together on 100 Thieves, but I mean, Acadian and Arrow, that's interesting. Flame and Wild Turtle, I mean, they have no connection. So it's a pretty big toss-up how these teams will actually do.
It's definitely going to be interesting. And this is kind of what you see after some of the top, most desired talent leaves. Like Mithy off the table, Pobelter off the table. Once those domestic guys are gone, then you got to see what's next. And you just keep going down the tier list. And if your team like Golden Guardians, the tier list is getting pretty low. So they need to get up and try to sign somebody. But yeah, if you're Optic, at least you still have these 2 guys that obviously are pretty talented, have the ability to carry games in Acadian and Arrow. And same thing, Flyquest with Flame and Wild Turtle.
That's the one.
That's the one. Yeah, 2 guys that can take over a game as well over there. So sign these guys who are high mechanical players and then try to build a team around that, and hopefully something sticks.
Yeah, well, there's been plenty of off-season news so far, as we expected, and there's plenty more to come. And the age-old question, will the Golden Guardians finally sign a player? I hope by the end of the week they have at least a player.
That'd be nice.
But we will see. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more esports content.